Why do so many debates between the woke and the anti-woke go absolutely nowhere? Why do some conversations feel productive while others deteriorate into yelling matches? What I mean by fail in the title of this video is that the conversation doesn't result in mutual understanding, despite a disagreement. What if I told you the problem isn't just an ideological and values conflict, it's developmental? Today I'll be breaking down why these conversations fail using cognitive developmental psychology. My name is Michael Dwan Herrick. I'm a psychotherapist and a life coach in London. Welcome to another episode of Questioning Woke Psychotherapy. Let's get right into our topic. Cognitive developmental psychology offers numerous models from many different theorists. For my purposes here, I'll be focusing on three well-established stages of cognitive development. The first two were identified by the Swiss psychologist Jean Piaget. In his book, The Growth of Logical Thinking from Childhood to Adolescence, published in 1958, he presented the first two stages that I'll be referring to today, concrete operational and formal operational thinking. I'll explain these first and then talk about the third stage. Once we have a basic understanding of all three, we can use them to understand a big part of why woke and anti-woke conversations often fail. The concrete operational stage is thinking tied to direct, tangible physical reality and experiences. It's characterized by rigid thinking and relies on fixed rules, authority figures, and tends to engage in black and white moral reasoning. Abstract or hypothetical reasoning is difficult at this stage. The formal operational stage allows for hypothetical reasoning and structured arguments. It can think within abstract systems and ideological frameworks. Principles like justice, equality, and freedom become central, although thinking may still be rigid within a chosen meaning-making framework. That's a very basic description of the first two stages. Formal operational thinking marked the apex of cognitive development, according to Piaget. Since Piaget, however, there have been many theorists who have described further stages beyond formal operational thinking. People like Robert Kegan, Michael Commons, Kurt Fischer, Michael Basiches, Suzanne Cook-Greuter, and Terry O'Fallon. Different theories suggest multiple stages beyond the formal operational stage and give these stages different names. For simplicity and time, I'm going to boil my description down to the essential shared features for what emerges in our cognitive development after formal operational thinking. It should be said that all the theorists I've just mentioned recognize that they have stood on the giant shoulders of Piaget. The post-formal stage of thinking moves beyond ideological frameworks and embraces contradictions, paradoxes, and evolving perspectives. It recognizes the limits of abstract models and ideologies. It acknowledges that all perspectives contain partial truths and must be contextually applied based on circumstances, other perspectives, and the complexity of the issue at hand. To boil these three stages down even further, we could say that concrete operational thinking is about understanding cause and effect in the physical world. Formal operational thinking is about abstract and ideological reasoning, and post-formal operational thinking is about multiple perspectives, paradox, and complexity. It is difficult to get a definitive set of percentages for adults at each of these stages of cognitive development. Estimates vary. For adults still at the concrete operational stage, the range is from 30 to 40%. Piaget asserted that only 40% of adults reach the formal operational stage, which suggests, according to him, that 60% are still at the concrete stage. Others have estimated that 60% of adults reach the formal stage. And for post-formal thinking, the estimates range from 10 to 20% in adults. These percentages are further complicated by the fact that capacity at each stage can be low or high, and that even when it's high, it's not consistently utilized. What seems safe to say, then, is that more adults than we might imagine are still at the concrete stage and relatively few are at the post-formal stage. I can reasonably guess that viewers of this video will be similarly distributed across the three stages. I myself slip in and out of all three stages depending on the situation and whether I've gotten enough sleep. If you're liking this video so far, please remember to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks. Now, back to our topic. To explore how conversations between the woke and the anti-woke tend to go, I've imagined them happening between different combinations of these three stages. For instance, what does it sound like if both woke and anti-woke are at the concrete stage? What if woke is at the concrete stage and anti-woke is at the formal stage? How about if both are at the formal stage? Finally, what about the post-formal stage? While hypothetically the woke could be at the post-formal stage, I believe it's rare, as ideological rigidity is a signature trait for woke, and the post-formal stage moves beyond this. So I will imagine two scenarios involving anti-woke at the post-formal stage. One where woke is at the concrete stage, and the other where woke is at the formal operational stage. These will be brief caricatures of conversations based on different scenarios and suggest the likely outcomes for each. I intend only to give an impression. So here we go. Concrete woke versus concrete anti-woke. The scenario is a workplace argument about diversity training. Woke. If you don't support this, then you're part of the problem. Anti-woke. This stuff is just indoctrination. You're brainwashed. Woke. I guess you just want to keep on oppressing people. Anti-woke. No, you want to divide us and blame everything on race. The outcome, the conversation deteriorates into a shouting match, and both see the other as either stupid or evil. Okay, concrete woke versus formal anti-woke. The scenario, a debate about systemic racism. Woke. If you don't see systemic racism, then you're blind. Wake up. There are countless examples that prove it. Anti-woke. Actually, disparities can be explained by multiple factors. Here's some research on cultural and economic influences. Woke. You're just making excuses for oppression. Anti-woke. No, I'm just pointing out that it's more complicated than a single cause. The outcome. The woke person feels angry and dismissed. The anti-woke person thinks they won the argument. What about formal woke versus concrete anti-woke? The scenario is a workplace discussion on affirmative action. Woke says, affirmative action is necessary to correct systemic imbalances. Anti-woke says, that's just unfair discrimination. People should work harder. Woke says, but historical disadvantages mean some groups don't start from the same place. And the anti-woke says, that's just victim mentality. Hard work and merit solves everything. The outcome, the woke person sees the anti-woke person as lacking any sophistication in their thinking. In other words, that they're stupid. The anti-woke person rejects systemic explanations, relying exclusively on individual responsibility narratives. Okay, now formal woke versus formal anti-woke. The scenario, a university debate on gender identity policies. Woke. Here's a study proving that gender identity policies improve mental health outcomes. Anti-woke. Well, here's a study suggesting they may have unintended negative consequences. Woke. Your sources are biased. Anti-woke. And so are yours. The outcome, an endless cycle of citing studies and statistics. Neither side budges. Next, concrete woke versus post-formal anti-woke. The scenario, a dinner table discussion on modern feminism. Woke. If you question feminism, You must be a sexist. Anti-woke. Well, I think feminism has made some important progress toward gender equality, but it also has blind spots. Why can't we talk about both? Woke. And listen to you defending oppression? No thanks. Anti-woke. Not at all. I'm not defending oppression. I'm saying social issues are complex and there are trade-offs. The outcome, the woke person sees the post-formal thinker as an enemy or a sellout. The anti-woke person feels discouraged and misunderstood. All right, now formal woke versus post-formal anti-woke. The scenario, a discussion about privilege. Woke. There's plenty of evidence that privilege explains disparities in success. It's a core issue in society. Anti-woke. Privilege is real, but so are cultural and personal factors. I think we should explore all the variables. Woke. But power structures shape all of these factors. Anti-woke. They play a role, but they aren't the sole determinant. Context also matters. The outcome. The woke person experiences some cognitive dissonance, but sticks to their framework, seeing the other as in denial and defensive. The anti-woke person feels they're banging their head against a wall. These made-up interactions suggest how cognitive developmental stages influence each person's perspective and communication styles. Concrete thinkers often perceive issues in black and white terms, relying heavily on established rules or authority figures to determine right and wrong. This can lead to rigid viewpoints and difficulty in appreciating nuanced arguments. Formal thinkers engage in abstract reasoning. They construct and stick to ideological frameworks. While capable of complex thought, they defend their perspectives rigidly, overlooking alternative viewpoints. Post-formal thinkers recognize the complexity of truth. They understand that context matters and that contradictions can coexist. They are more open to integrating diverse and paradoxical perspectives. By identifying these cognitive stages, we can better understand the root of many communication breakdowns in woke versus anti-woke conversations and debates. Recognizing where someone is coming from developmentally allows for more tailored and effective ways to engage with them and reduce unproductive conflicts. I want to back up now and say more about formal operational thinking on both sides. In my opening, I said that the problem isn't just an ideological and values conflict. Well, I believe that that's true. It's also part of the problem. If we recognize that the woke tend to be progressive and the anti-woke tend to be conservative, at least at the concrete and formal stages, it can be useful to identify the basic values and ideological frames that each operates from. The economist Thomas Sowell provides a clear framework to think about this in his book, A Conflict of Visions. He provides valuable insights into the formal operational thinking of both the woke and the anti-woke. He identifies that progressives and conservatives operate from different assumptions about human nature and therefore different ideological systems and visions for our collective social life. The progressive view is that there is no inherent human nature. We're born a blank slate upon which society and culture writes what it wants us to think and do. Therefore, human nature is malleable and perfectible. We can write whatever we choose to eliminate injustice and create an ideal or utopian social reality. The conservative view is that human nature is fixed and self-interested. It emphasizes the importance of traditional institutions because it sees human nature as inherently flawed, limited, and prone to errors. Traditional institutions have evolved to provide stability and structure against the negative aspects of human nature. In the context of woke and anti-woke discussions, the unconstrained vision of the woke advocates for transformative changes to rectify perceived systemic social inequalities. The constrained vision of the anti-woke emphasizes the preservation of established norms and highlights the potential risks of rapid societal change. Soul's analysis elucidates why these groups often find themselves at an impasse. Their foundational beliefs about human nature and societal change are fundamentally different. While Soul adeptly outlines these conflicting visions, he stops short of offering a synthesis. A post-formal approach, however, seeks to integrate these perspectives by acknowledging that human nature possesses both fixed traits and capacities for growth. Therefore, systemic reforms are sometimes necessary, but should be approached with an awareness of potential unintended consequences. By moving beyond binary thinking, post-formal reasoning encourages nuanced discussions that consider the merits and limitations of both visions, fostering more productive dialogues in the woke versus anti-woke discourse. In this sense, the so-called anti-woke become the woke critical. It's not so much against woke, but more about attempting to preserve its more partial truths and good intentions and integrate them into a creative dialectical tension with conservative values. For myself, reflecting on these three cognitive developmental stages has helped me to understand why my own conversations with the woke have failed, sometimes with those I'm closest to. The first reason is when I am stuck in the concrete or formal stage and fail to appreciate the partial truths and good intentions of the other because of my own rigid ideological thinking. The other reason is when I have failed to recognize where the other person is coming from in terms of their own cognitive stage. I forget that logic and facts cannot penetrate the concrete or ideologically possessed mind. What I recommend then is this. When approaching these kinds of conversations, we could be clear about our intentions. Do you want to persuade the other, defeat the other, learn from the other, or reach mutual understanding? Be realistic about the likelihood of fulfilling any of these intentions. The only one you can control is whether you learn anything or not. Engage in active listening. Hear and understand what the other person is saying. And beyond that, also identify as best you can what cognitive developmental stage they're operating from. Adjust your expectations and mode of engagement accordingly. Use concrete examples for the concrete and abstract reasoning for the formal. Reflect your understanding of the other person's perspective and position back to them in language that matches their cognitive stage. Be clear in your own head about your perspective and position, but don't just blurt it out in opposition to the other. My observations and experiences suggest to me that we can't win these kinds of arguments. At best, we can plant seeds that may take a long time to grow, if ever, and we probably won't be around to see it anyway. We can't usually plant any seeds by hurling them against stone. Instead, demonstrating curiosity about the other's views is like loosening the soil. Then we can present information or an alternative perspective in the form of a question that triggers some curiosity in the other. They probably won't admit it, but they might go away and think about it. It helps if we recognize the cognitive stage that we are using in our engagement and adjust it for the person we're talking with. From a post-formal position, we can have access to both concrete and formal as the situation calls for, but used not to win an argument, but to meet the other where they are. Ultimately, I believe our best chances are with post-formal or dialectical thinking, if we can manage it. That said, post-formal thinking isn't opposed to ideology per se. An ideology is simply a system of thinking or meaning-making based on a particular set of assumptions. Not only is this not bad, but it's also necessary. It becomes ideological when it refuses to recognize any other sets of foundational assumptions or the meaning-making that comes from them. Formal thinking is stuck in a particular ideology, while post-formal contends with multiple ideologies. It also allows for the very real possibility that one's understanding is wrong, and most certainly it's incomplete. I also want to acknowledge that there is a difference between the underlying woke ideology and its various expressions. Some things that it advocates need to be defeated by powerful arguments at the formal stage. For instance, gender-affirming care for minors. The CAST report, you might look it up if you don't know about it, needs to be trotted out for this. At the same time, compassion for the well-being of children experiencing gender dysphoria can be recognized, and the means for addressing it can be robustly embraced. Perhaps this is a move from formal to post-formal, and it makes sense sometimes. Well, I suspect that I have left out something important, but I can't say everything, so I'm going to stop here. Thanks for joining me and staying until the end. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other, and I hope you'll come back for the next video. Bye for now.